awkward pause, but we are live. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, anyone watching now or later. It is an absolute pleasure to be joined, as I've said before, by two people whose work I actually honestly do admire and who are friends of the channel/podcast. So Holly Tinsley and Joseph Oliveira. Holly, how are you?
I am excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me again. It is nice to be back.
Anytime. And Joseph, you've been very busy for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, thanks for having me back and getting a hold of me. I got back to you in the end. I do apologize for the slight delay.
It was a bit mission impossible at one point, but I totally understand. So there you go. So some of the HL Tinsley fan club are already here. So there we go. Right. So the idea for today was for me to learn a little bit about crowdfunding, and I think you both have got experience on that topic, and hopefully we can talk about successes, failures, and how it fits into all of it. So I think maybe the way I say it, at some point, Holly, you've got your books, or Joseph, you've written your comics, maybe you've commissioned the art beforehand or not. So at what point in the creative process does crowdfunding kick in? Maybe Holly, you can start.
I think for us, it was really a case of it being an option from the get-go. I think it was more a case of us weighing up the pros and cons of the various avenues that we could take. So when we started talking about putting this anthology together, which was the Anatomy of Fear, which I'm just going to plug now if nobody minds. So there it is. We initially were trying to decide whether we were going to go for a standard print on demand, going through Amazon and the usual channels, or if we were going to crowdfund it. And some of the things that we looked at were what was the level of demand for the product. So with anthologies, there is always sort of a shelf limit to how many you're going to sell of them. They're predominantly used more as a taster, so people can get an idea of the author's work, and then obviously they will discover people that they might want to pick up other books for or like look into more. So for us, the decision to go with crowdfunding was based on, we knew that was going to be our primary sales platform for the book. So in essence, we were doing the majority of our selling before it was released. So for us, it made sense because it was allowing us to gauge kind of the audience and the interest levels.
So in a sense, does crowdfunding for you work a little bit like a pre-order sort of system, and then you get a sense for how many books to print and what kind of edition you want to go for?
I mean, essentially for us, it was the case that, it was the number of books that we sold through Kickstarter, we knew were going to be the majority of our sales overall. And then anything above and beyond that was a bonus. So what we did was we set our goals to allow us to make a better product. So to invest in better artwork, to actually compensate the authors for the work that they did, and just kind of up the level of quality that we could have otherwise had through something like Amazon or a print on demand where we were having to pay the costs ourselves and then recoup them afterwards.
Yeah, I get that. And Joseph, I'm assuming for you maybe it's a little bit different because you're collaborating with the artists because you don't do the artwork yourself. So at what point in the process does the crowdfunding kick in for you?
Now it's at a point where I like to get the majority of the artwork done, if not all completed ahead of time, so then we can have the quick turnaround. So the knock-on effect of previous successful Kickstarters help contribute to doing that, paying ahead for the artwork and completing all that ahead of time, and and that accumulating over time. But as soon as I've got the script done and it's with the artist, it's basically when all the artwork is complete that I'll then start looking at the Kickstarter then and rolling that out within a couple of weeks after the artwork's done, if it's not already been planned ahead too much.
Right, but I suppose at the point that you're at, you've already got built in some sort of savings/equity, and you can afford to do that. But sort of your first time round, you obviously maybe didn't have that, or did you pony up the initial investment from your savings and then took on from there?
Yeah, it's a bit of the latter. Yeah, so I was working full time in a car factory and then living alone. So that allowed me to, accumulate some savings that I put. They call it skin in the game. And again, even back then, I got most of the artwork. I think it was almost complete, or was complete. It was 44 pages, all ahead of time. And because I'd seen so many Kickstarters like failing, or so I had a low goal just to pay for the print costs, because if it was to pay for the art as well, it would have been a couple of thousand, and I'd never done a Kickstarter before, obviously. So to come to the platform brand new and then have that marker saying zero Kickstarter, first Kickstarter launch, and asking for like 5-6 grand or something, I don't think a lot of people would have took the punt as easy as, oh, the goal here is, I think it was 600, 700 for the print run. So, the book was about £7-8. It was perfect bound, and I'd only have to sell 100 backers minimum to make that. So it was a bit more people more likely to take a punt, I think, on something like that, rather than a £6 grand goal and no previous experience, as it were. So I was earning my bit of rep, kind of like take a punt and then we'll go from there, kind of thing. I will deliver.
So that makes sense. So you start small, and then maybe you get that bit of, like you said, that bit of reputation of, I've already been successful once. Maybe that gets people more engaged.
Yeah, because the following Kickstarter was issue 2 for Ghost Island, and I asked for the amount. Then it was like three grand, I think, and that was funded. And people could say I'd done it before, and then you could get issue 1 if you wanted in this Kickstarter. So then it's just, as I say, accumulated from there. But I think it's so important to have that going in. Put as much as you can as possible in yourself. Invest, into the future moving forward, I suppose.
So the bit I'm trying to understand. So you've written the book, so you've got the comic and the artwork, everything is in place. But where are your customers? Like, where is your audience? How do you know that this thing has got legs? Like, how do you take the plunge? How do you know that there is an audience or a market for it?
Do you want to get this one first?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll say, I mean, for me, it was a different kettle of fish in the sense that I was working with 12 authors. So this was a collaborative project with a lot of people bringing a pre-made audience to the table. What I will say is that the level of prep work that needs to go into something like this to find the audience is a lot of work in and of itself. So I think we started teasing out the potential for a Kickstarter in the end of November, and the Kickstarter wasn't until the following February. So it was a good kind of 4-month period where we were purely drumming up interest and kind of gauge responses. So we put things out on social media, people sent things out in newsletters, and we felt that over those 4 months, the level of interaction we'd seen gave us the confidence to go ahead and put the Kickstarter out and go live. I think knowing your audience is really important, not just in the sense of, for us, all the authors had their own audiences, but also we had to find the horror audience. We had to find the anthology audience, the Kickstarter audience. So we were going into places that we wouldn't normally interact. So I was going into horror forums, and I was going into Discords and things like that, and just kind of talking to people and seeing, who would you want to see in an anthology? What kind of themes would you want the authors to touch on, and really doing that initial level of research. And yes, there was a spreadsheet involved. There were several spreadsheets involved, because as you know, I do love a good spreadsheet.
It's the classic Holly Tinsley ultra preparation before executing any plan.
6-month plan, 3-month plan, 1-month plan.
Right. So I'm getting the sense that you have to you've got to market and publicize the Kickstarter before launching it. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's you're marketing it as you would any other product that you're going to put out there. You're just marketing it in advance of it being created, so you're kind of doing it back to front. But it is actually it's a very good way to do it for someone who is an independent creative, because it makes it almost a little bit more risk averse to do it that way, because you already know going in that what you're creating has got that audience.
Okay. And what about you, Joseph? Is it similar for you as well?
I think, what Holly did at the beginning was very smart. I'm looking back, I wish I kind of done something like that kicked off with an anthology of comics, of like a series of shorts, and got a bunch of creators, writers with that baked in audience. I thought that would be a really smart idea. I think I got that gist about when I was like 4 Kickstarters in. That's when I started doing that. But for the first one, I was just writing down then. I backed over like 100 comics on Kickstarter before I launched my first one. So to get an idea of how it was, put together, how they launched, how they fulfilled, and also like getting to know some of the creators in the comics community, because in the comics community in the UK, it's very quite close knit. So you get to know people's names, who they are, and you see them regularly at conventions then. So there's, a few made connections with, and then, so I made all, I backed a bunch of Kickstarters, and then I listened to like a bunch of podcasts. There's one really popular one for comics called Comics Launch Podcast. I listened to that for like a year before I even launched one. Goes through all the ins and outs, because I was at work full time, and it was the only thing keeping me going, listening to these podcasts of how you put a Kickstarter together and all this. So really like passed the time, as well as learning as well. But I also, like, looking back, I cringe at, I just did cold calling and DMing people on Twitter in the comics. People, probably still blocked to this day. This is going back 8 years ago, spamming them with like, oh, you like this Jurassic Park with Ghost, and then the Kickstarter link. Just never said hey, and then put that, and it's just like, oh my God, I'd never do that ever again. So I don't recommend that to anyone. But yeah, like I said, the anthology idea is a great idea. I wish I'd started with that, and I'd probably recommend that to anyone starting one now in comics and Kickstarter as well, because they do really well.
And I think, Holly, you mentioned something about the Kickstarter audience. So do I gather from that there's a group of people who engage in just funding Kickstarter projects, just looking for the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are groups on like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, who purely will follow different Kickstarters and see who they want to back. There are groups where if your Kickstarter is getting a lot of attention, the algorithms will pull it through and make it like a featured Kickstarter in those groups. So the more attention that you can get on them, the better. So yeah, there's literally people who just want to invest in Kickstarters and crowdfunding projects.
Okay.
Same with comics, I'd say as well. Like people that can't get to the comic shop or something like that, and want something new, or it's the only other place that they can find, that's not superheroes, Marvel, DC on the shelves, and want something a bit more, off the beaten track. Kickstarter is like the grander publisher, under of everything, I suppose.
So, being slightly cynical, so what's the incentive to part with my money with a crowdfunding project when I can wait for it to be financed by someone else, and maybe I can buy your comic, Joy, or your book, Holly, I can get it cheaper once the whole thing has been funded? How do you incentivize people to not take that view?
So for most people, it comes down to the level of exclusivity for Kickstarters. So prime example with the Anatomy of Fear, we did a Kickstarter exclusive cover. So the people that backed through the Kickstarter rather than purchasing through like an Amazon or a convention, they would get a cover that was a limited run. So it would be different and have that kind of additional value to it. I say additional value, but sentimental value probably mostly. We also offered things like the add-ons and the extras. So a big part of Kickstarter is the reward tiers that people can have. So you would be buying the book itself, but you would also be getting additional digital books or pictures, artwork, bookmarks. And for a lot of people, it's those extra goodies that they can get that incentivize them.
And I'd say, like Holly, the Kickstarter exclusives, in comics, we have the variant comics. We have these are like, we only printed like 50 or so. Sorry, I think 25 or 20 of these. And, go higher or lower in variants. And there's a lot of collectors out there that love to collect. And these will never be printed again in terms of variants. So it's like the only place that you can grab them. And you can get them signed as well by creators and writers that you probably wouldn't be able to, in the comic shop and stuff. And for myself, when they do go in the comic shops, they'll be the same price you could get them from me. So if you want to look deep within, when you support an indie publisher, you're supporting the writers, the artists, and the functioning of the publishing house, basically. Whereas, as you know, if you go to the comic shop, they'll take 50% of the sale.
So I mean, going slightly off topic for a second here, but so how independent are you now, Joseph? Because you just got a distribution deal with Diamond, the biggest UK publisher of comics. So are you indie anymore, or are you now uncool because you got
definitely still indie? Definitely still indie. I wanted to show you something actually. Are you familiar with the previews catalog?
No.
So previews catalog is when a comic shop gets sent a catalog of comics coming out that month.
Oh yeah.
So Marvel and DC actually get their own now. So this is the monthly comics that are coming out for them. But also the monthly comics for everyone else is this size. Yeah. So I've got a bit of competition.
So you are somewhere there.
Yeah. So I'm not quite got my own catalog to itself just yet, but so I'm still firmly indie.
Working in progress. Yeah. Okay. So what happens if a Kickstarter doesn't get fully funded? What do you have to then put up the rest of the money yourself? Does the project fail and all the money gets back to the backers? What happens there?
Do you want to go on this one, or do you want me to?
Well, I've had a failed one, so
yeah, go. Yeah, you go.
Yeah. So I think it was Ghost Island 3. I was asking for a bit more because it was another bigger sized book, a bit oversized. So I needed obviously more art costs, more print costs, more shipping costs, and it was my fourth Kickstarter, and I think. And what was the question again? I totally.
So when a Kickstarter fails, does the money go back to the backers, and does the project fail?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So it was before, like 5 days before the end. It was pretty clear we weren't going to make it, so I cancelled it. And then when you cancel it, everyone, so you don't actually get debited on your account for any pledge on Kickstarter until the campaign finishes and it's fully funded. So you could pledge at the start. You're not pledged any money. It's only when it finishes and it's completed that it would actually take the money from you.
Right.
But I cancelled that Kickstarter, and everyone, nobody lost anything. But then I did an update explaining, be transparent, saying this is where we go from here. And then I launched a week later, and then with a lower goal, and split the book in half. So it was 22 pages each, and we funded, and it was successful. So.
Right. Okay. I see that. Oh God, I had the next question up, and I thought it happens too often where I literally lose my train of thought as I'm going to speak, which is deeply embarrassing. Oh yeah, that's it. So I've seen some projects that get over 100% funded. Like if they're very successful, you may get like I don't know, 150, 200%. I don't know. Brandon Sanderson gets like funded like 400%. all that extra money, so where does that go? Is that straight to the profit line, or what happens with the extra money?
Wish. I mean, for us, it predominantly went into the stretch goals. So I think I'm probably going to quote the wrong figures now, but I think our initial starting goal was about 3,500, and I think we ended up actually making just short of 6. But what we did is we pre-planned all of our stretch goal tiers, so we knew that if we hit the 3.5, we were going to be able to make the book the way we had described it. If we hit 4,000, we were going to be able to add in the additional illustrations. If we hit 5,000, we were going to be able to do the audio book. So all those costs were already accounted for before we started. And I think we ended up, by the time we'd taken out the additional expenses of things we hadn't accounted for, like kind of extra shipping costs and things like that, we pretty much came exactly to budget. So generally, there's not a lot left in the kitty. But I think most people, from what I've seen doing other Kickstarters, if they do have additional funds, is that they will put them back into either the next project, or they'll go to paying their kind of creative outsources, so their artists, their narrators, that kind of thing.
Is that the case for you, Joseph, as well?
Yeah, it will usually mean like we get to do a larger print run. If there's higher demand, that means we get to do a larger print run, and then I'll cipher that out, across the next few Kickstarters and know what the demand is. And then you don't want to be left with, because in comics it's like issue 1s, issue 2s, issue 3s. Don't want to be left with issue 2s and no issue 1s, that kind of vibe. And it can mean better quality printing paper. We know we can upgrade, because comic paper, can vary from 90 GSM to a bit higher, and also you see these ones doing 6 figures, but when there's that much demand, it also means there's a lot of product to also print, and the shipping costs as well. So it may look like they're making a lot, but it might be finer margin than it looks.
No, I get that. And then, so is crowdfunding a second best option? Is it your only option, or is it just a best of option for you and the work that you put out? Holly?
I think it depends. There's not really a straight answer to that one, because it's a really good option for a lot of people, but it's high risk in some senses. So if you are very confident that you have got a built-in audience and you've got people that want the product that you're putting out there, then it's probably a really good way to go, because as I say, you're not having to front those upfront costs, you're making those sales ahead of the product being made. However, if you're someone who is completely new, you're probably going to have a much higher chance of the project failing until you have a little bit more clout behind you. So the thing with Kickstarter is, I think people can tend to be a little bit idealistic about it, and they'll think, because I've got a great idea, I'll do a Kickstarter and people will back it because it's a great idea. It's not enough to have a great idea. You have to have 90% of a great product before you go ahead and do it. So I think if you've got to that place where you've got an audience and you've got a product, then yes, absolutely go for it. If you're not at that place yet, think about it as something for the future down the line. Start building towards it and make it a goal if that's what you want to do. That would probably be the way I'd look at it.
Right. And for you, Joseph, could you do what you do without crowdfunding? Would you have a different avenue to fund your projects?
So
I suppose you could take a loan or something like that. But
so the other option is well, you see, crowdfunding is another avenue to sell the comics. Basically, at the end of the day, that's a big factor in after comics as a business. A lot of sales, and we also have the add-ons. The whole catalog after comics catalog is available on each Kickstarter add-on to people that are backing for the first time or have missed previous issues. So the Kickstarter is really integral part, but I'd love to not be so reliant on it. Obviously, but this is where, you know, securing the comic shop distribution comes in this year. You know, this year, you know, I'm trialing it basically. So I'm going to start releasing comics that not through Kickstarter platform, but through the comic shops direct, and we'll see how that does, because, you know, comics costs quite a chunk of cash to produce for all the artwork and stuff. So to be able to break even on something like that in the comic shop world, you know, you're having to sell in the thousands basically.
No,
So that's building up to, you know, to that point over time. So I am trialing it this year. I was just in last month's previews with Wendigo Wood and Elena. So I'll find out at the end of this month, you know, what the order count is from the shops worldwide, kind of thing, and we'll see where we're at, where our starting block is, and where we work from there, you know, and if it becomes a more viable, you know, because at the moment I've got a comic coming out every month. I'd love to have more comics every month, and if I can get the demand to a point in the comic shops where, you know, we're getting thousands of orders over time, you know, that's when we can start, you know, pulling just a little bit away back from Kickstarter. But at the moment, the model is fund on Kickstarter. Got all the stock now, and now we go to the comic shops, and people that don't like to back on Kickstarter, which is a large chunk of people out there that just like to get their comics from the comic shop traditional method. You know, that's the market. You know, I'm also stepping foot in, so we'll see how it goes. But you know, that's the goal to grow that way as well.
right. I was actually only, I suppose, half joking only. If you've got a great product, Holly, like you said, you got to the point where you got an audience, you got your book, your comic, why not take a loan and fund it through traditional debt means?
I mean, there is always options for that. I mean, I don't know how viable it is for a lot of independent creators. I think the thing about a lot of indies is obviously they are people who don't have a huge amount to invest in their projects. So therefore, it would be safe to assume they don't have a huge amount to pay back, like huge interest rates on loans and things. So although it is an option that's out there, I think by doing it the crowdfunding way, again, it's about taking that risk out of it, that if the worst happens and your Kickstarter doesn't fund and you fail, you don't lose anything, and your backers, they've lost the potential of a product, but you can still then go and make that product through an alternative route, or just choose not to. Whereas if you take out a loan and then nobody buys the product that you've made, you've still got that loan.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it's just it does eliminate the financial risk of having to repay the loan. And Joseph, you mentioned before you had a failed crowdfunding project. Is there a reputational damage to that? Does that show up in your history in whichever platform you're using? What are the risks or the consequences of having a failed Kickstarter or whatever crowdfunding? I'm just using the two terms.
Yeah. It still says it. You know, the campaigns there on the my profile. You know that it was cancelled and didn't make the funded. I think it kind of like humanizes it a little bit. You know, it's like it was a knock. You know, you got knocked down from it. It wasn't a great feeling and didn't make the funds. You know, when like Holly will probably know. You know, you put your passion into your work and you put it out there. It's like your baby, and people don't reciprocate with it, or don't. You know, you've not launched it right, or you've done something wrong your side. It falls at your feet, and you know, it was a big learning curve, and I'm so glad it happened because I learned so much from it. And when I did quite a paragraph post about, you know, apologizing to the backers, you know, I didn't plan this correctly. I should have done better. This is what we're going to do more moving forward. You know, the important thing about that whole experience was completely bouncing back and not running away with my tail between my legs, you know, and, you know, growing from it as well, from the experience. And you know, like I said, I've launched a week later with a new plan, new done. It's funded and it was published. You know.
No, I get that. I meant more in terms of like within the platform. Is there some sort of credit score that may count against you going forward? Like, oh, this creator here has got 1 or 2 failed projects, and everyone is aware of that information, and they may think twice about backing your next project. Is that something that can potentially happen?
No, nothing like that. No, it's just like I said, you post an update explaining why you cancelled it, and the people that backed you can see all that, and it's all public as well. And it's the Kickstarter platform is very supportive. At the end of the day, it's people, the public taking a risk on a brand new idea that may not take fruition or not. They know that Kickstarter makes it very clear that you are taking a risk by pledging, and that said creator doesn't have to you fulfill at the end of the day. They don't owe you anything. You're taking a pledge to that person and hoping that they deliver.
Right. Okay. And what are the costs associated with the platforms? I'm sure they must take some kind of cut, or have some fees for providing this service.
I think Kickstarter takes 2%, and then they add the card processing fees, which are 3%. So 5% in total of the funding goal they take off.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Whether the project succeeds or not.
Only if it succeeds.
Oh, only if it succeeds.
Yeah, because they're not processing anything if it
you said before. Yeah, that's right. They don't. Okay. So
it's in Kickstarter's interest for you to fund, and
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I haven't got the numbers. I'm not going to do it now. I was just wondering whether 5% would be comparable to a small personal loan that you could take at a bank. I think that would be an interesting exercise. Because
for me though, like, where am I going to sell the comics then? Though, where am I going to debut it? My website currently does not have the traffic a Kickstarter could lead the people looking to back a comic. It doesn't have that urgency of like a 30-day campaign. This is your 30 days you've got to pledge and you can get this comic. It does not have that. So to get a loan and then for me to invest in all the artwork, sure, I could go through the comic shops, but it would be less of a risk through Kickstarter, and then at least eyeballs are getting on it. Oh, I remember that. I've seen that come up. Either organically, people searching for the comics category, people sharing it between updates you can do with other campaign creators, general algorithm.
Right. And then I suppose more. Well, I think you both do digital versions of your work. So if you could just distribute through Amazon, say, or why would you want the physical version of it? Is it worth having that physical version out there, Holly?
I mean, I think certainly for books, it is. One thing that I learned very quickly through doing the Kickstarter is that the products with the highest level of interest are the tangible products that people can actually get. So hardbacks, paperbacks, comics, all the kind of additional physical goods always go really, especially if it's something that's either signed or exclusive, which for most indie authors, doing a small print run of books is prohibitively expensive, but there is a huge audience that primarily only want physical products. So again, that kind of caters for that niche and that need as well.
Right. Okay.
I would say the same my end as well. There's people that only want to get digital, and there's only people that get physical. But it makes sense because, but if it's Amazon, they cover the cost because they distribute worldwide. I distribute worldwide, but their shipping costs are probably going to be a hell of a lot, competitively rated than me shipping to Australia. Maybe they have obviously an Amazon distribution house there to do it much cheaper on their Prime or whatever.
Yeah, but I think it's obviously very different products, because I am very traditional, but I'm not averse to a digital version of a book. I just kind of wrap my head around digital comics. I don't get it, but that's just me. I think comics have to be tangible, and I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know if the artwork would translate in the same way into a Kindle or a tablet or something like that.
Did you ever use the Comixology app?
No. I'm familiar with, but
Because that did the panel view. You know, when you swiped, it would zoom in on the air bubble, and then you swipe again, it would go to the next air bubble. You know, it would like move away around, so it would follow the story for you.
Right.
So it wasn't like zooming in on pinching the screen and stuff like that. It was quite cool. It was quite intuitive.
Okay.
But they've shut it down now, so.
Oh, is that gone now?
It's gone now, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I think on the main, that sort of answers kind of the questions that I had about crowdfunding. I mean, you've mentioned, Joseph, that in an ideal future, you wouldn't be so dependent on it. And for you, Holly, is that something that you would ideally move away from, or is that a perfectly valid tool for what you are trying to achieve?
I think for me, it's a very valid way of achieving what I want to achieve. If there were alternative platforms out there, I would happily explore other options and other avenues. I think for most authors, the fact is that we are pretty much at the mercy of having, I say at the mercy of our audience sounds wrong, but at the end of the day, I'm always going to struggle as an independent author to get books into bookstores. I'm always going to struggle against the likes of Amazon, against the big box sellers. So to use Kickstarter as a way to gauge, connect, and sell to my audience, for me at the moment, is probably one of the better options, because I know that is built for the type of audience that I want. So yeah, I could try other routes, but it probably wouldn't be as successful. I would be competing against every Love Island celebrity biography, and they're not going to come and do a Kickstarter. So that space is it's more open for the people like myself.
Ooh. Actually, a couple more things that I just thought of now. There you go. I should actually script these things. I should have my list of questions. This is terrible. I'm a terrible host. So is Kickstarter then cheaper than print on demand?
I mean, it's not necessarily that it's cheaper. It's that you already know you're covering the costs up front. So you still have to pay for the same printing costs because you would run it through a small print or through Amazon or through Ingram Spark, whatever you're going to use. Those costs are still the same. It's just that you're covering them before you go ahead and place that order.
Right. Okay. Right.
I wouldn't even be able to entertain print on demand for comics. It would just be. I think you make about 5 pence or something. Because it's full color kind of printing.
We have a question here from the chat. So we kind of touched upon it a little bit earlier before, but so the first steps for preparing a Kickstarter and the most important things to do first, obviously having your product ready to go. But there you go. Who wants to take this one?
The hell you go.
Okay, so first steps of preparing for a Kickstarter. Number one, have a business plan. So we started planning out not just the concept of the book, but we had a crib sheet with so much information about the book, the audience, printing costs. We had budgets, we had spreadsheets. We had a team of people all who got assigned different jobs. So although I kind of led overall, we had Tim Hardy, who was he dealt with all our finances. He also dealt with all our contracts and any of the legal side of it. We had Jacob Sanix, who was dealing with shipping, distribution, production. Lacey Connolly was dealing with the formatting and the actual putting together of the book itself. Loads of people with different jobs. So we started by basically planning out who was going to do what what each stage of the campaign was going to look like. And then it was all about making collateral. So we got audio snippets made of all the books. We got Instagram post videos. We had a feature video that we put on the campaign page as well. And I'll say we did all of this prior to launching, and it still was not enough. We still had to scramble for a good 3 weeks during the campaign up until the final week to constantly put out new material and new kind of plugs and new marketing for it. So we prepared a lot, and it was still a lot of work. So yeah, the first steps for preparing for a Kickstarter is probably preparing for a Kickstarter as much as possible.
Right. I just once again, what you just said there, it's what you guys do is a genuine labor of love, and I take my hat off to the two of you, because it is so much more than just writing the script for a comic or writing a grim, dark novel. You guys do so much beyond what is just your job description. That is truly remarkable. Everything that you do. I'm I've said it before, I say in public, you guys are amazing, the two of you. That's incredible.
Appreciate it.
That.
Right. I think that's sort of pretty much it for me. Before we go, if you guys want to self-promote, if you want to plug anything, any project, Holly, when is Vanguard Chronicles #3 coming out, please?
It's currently in the works. I have got the majority of July planned in to hopefully do what will be the final draft before it goes to the editor. I say hopefully because I'm still not 100% happy with it. But I have a tentative date in mind for next year, which will be kind of late spring. But watch this space and I will let people know.
And where can people find the rest of your work and everything you do?
People can find me. Generally, I am lurking on Twitter, probably much more than I ought to be. My handle on Twitter is at Holly Tinsley, and the E is a 3. I also have a website, which is www.hltinsley.co.uk, I believe. And I am also on Instagram as well. Generally, all the usual social media haunts, you will find me there. So just pop on and say hi to me.
Fantastic. And Joseph, my request for you, please, you need to get on the whole trade paperback thing. I need those edition, everything together. I want to read. Come on, the Wood. Which
Wendigo Wood.
Wendigo Wood. I need a trade paperback of all those things, please. I want to get.
It's out. It's out.
It's out, and the From Beneath, isn't it? The other one that.
Beneath Us, yeah.
Beneath Us.
So
yeah.
if you want Wendigo Wood, it's coming in comic shops in October. So that should be wherever you get your comics from. Beneath Us 3 is currently live on Kickstarter now. It's got about 5-6 days left. So third issue in the horror comic series about deepest creatures beneath us and making their way to the surface into this remote village, and the villagers have to band together to fight the onslaught. So it's like a survival horror. And then I've got the board game coming out hopefully later this year, Survive the Tombs of the Cryptids, just like UK Games Expo last weekend, demo and that. And next month there'll be another Kickstarter for a Japanese manga horror from this artist in Japan. It's really exciting, and yeah, it's going to be like a perfect band manga. So still going with one Kickstarter every month. So you can find me on afterlightcomics.com, and all the books behind me you'll find on the website as well. And I ship worldwide as well, direct to wherever you are also. And just search Afterlight Comics on whatever social media you're on as well. I'm probably on it.
Brilliant. Once again, thank you very much, Holly, Joseph. It's been fantastic. It's been great learning for me. So I really appreciate your time and your insights, and everyone that was watching. There's a lot of lurkers in the chat. Only Spencer has been brave enough to ask. So I'll try to figure out who these people were. But anyway, once again, thank you to the two of you, everyone that was watching now or later. Take lots and lots of care, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Jose. Bye.
and